Indiana News Desk is made possible in part by Maller Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. LawMG.com. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnerships with communities and organizations. rural.indiana.edu. Smithville, fiber internet, security solutions, and voice in southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Bunger & Robertson, attorneys at law, utilizing 75 years of experience, knowledge, and resources to help individuals and families recover in personal injury matters. Information at lawbr.com. And by WTIU members. Thank you.
Coming up on Indiana News Desk. An estimated 300,000 people are expected to descend upon Bloomington for next month's total eclipse. To get a taste of what the city is in store for, we visited Hopkinsville, Kentucky, ground zero for the 2017 total eclipse.
It was busy. It was a lot of fun. It was as far as the experience of the eclipse itself, it's pretty spectacular.
A new law overrides a Monroe County ordinance and allows building on properties such as around lakes with slopes up to 25%.
What we were really looking for is just another mechanism to make it easier to construct the much needed housing that we need here in Monroe County.
But one state senator says the bill benefits mainly the rich. And Bloomington police should be carrying tasers as early as next month as part of a pilot program. We'll have these stories plus the latest news from across the state right now on Indiana News Desk. Welcome to Indiana News Desk. I'm Joe Wren. Well, 7 years ago, Hopkinsville, Kentucky had its moment in the sun. In 2017, the small town about an hour and a half south of Evansville welcomed over 100,000 visitors because of its spot in the path of totality for the last solar eclipse. In anticipation of Bloomington's eclipse next month, our Callie Lichter visited Hopkinsville to talk to people about the impact of the big event on the town.
Some call it Hopkinsville. Others call it Hoptown. But in 2017, the town got another nickname, Eclipseville.
We did officially rebrand ourselves as Eclipseville and just really ran with it.
The town was deemed the point of greatest eclipse by NASA in the 2017 total solar eclipse, which had eclipse chasers and families alike rushing into the area. During the eclipse, Hopkinsville, which has a population of around 30,000 people, nearly quadrupled in size with 120,000 people visiting the town. And that's just the people who made it official. On a day, the town stood still for 2 minutes and 41.2 seconds.
I don't think you really realize it's going to be dark. You're going to hear sounds that you hear at night.
I still get cold chills.
With that many people, everyone in Hopkinsville had to plan and plan and plan.
We started planning a year out with that designation of the great area of greatest eclipse. That just meant that we thought that we were going to have a large influx of people coming in, so we had to plan really for all contingencies. You know, anything could happen.
Randy Graham has been the Christian County Emergency Management Director since 2010. The day of the 2017 eclipse went smoothly for him and the county's first responders, but it was thanks to the prep work that went into it.
That's what we do in emergency management. You plan for the worst and hope for the best.
He says he was lucky they had support from state resources, but also the state draws in mostly eclipse chasers and families. Former mayor of Hopkinsville, Carter Hendricks, says he now understands the eclipse chasing phenomenon that brought so many into town.
We want to go be a part of this next total solar eclipse because it really is truly an inspirational experience.
Now the executive director of the Southwestern Kentucky Economic Development Council, Hendricks says he worked 2 years making sure the city wasn't the only thing leaving a lasting impression on visitors.
And that people would leave it going, you know, that not only did I enjoy the actual physical experience of the eclipse, but I enjoyed the hospitality that community provided.
Integral in that effort was Debbie Level, who worked closely with the then Eclipse coordinator Brooke Young. Level coordinated with Eclipse VIPs and press efforts.
Luckily, she called me one day and she said, "Could you please help me the day of?"
Level says that eclipse prep didn't stop in the sky. Laying down mulch also helped in the beautification effort.
We did a lot of extra things to really spruce up Hopkinsville.
But when she put on her eclipse safety glasses and turned her eyes to the skies, it was unlike anything she had ever seen.
It was almost like an out-of-body experience because you'd heard about it, but I think you just didn't realize how it was really going to be.
And for others, an experience they'll never forget.
It's one of those things that we kind of thought possibly it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Master distiller AJ opened up his Casey Jones distillery to about 6,000 people on Eclipse Day. He said the draw was partially thanks to the distillery's Total Eclipse moonshine.
You know, for us, it meant quite a bit of sales. You know, we had trademarked Total Eclipse moonshine.
He filled the property with music, tents, and room for camping, making a weekend out of the festivities.
The thing we started doing was we started planning about 2 years before the eclipse because we knew it was going to happen. And we knew our location and the studies that we did on it, we knew people were going to flock to this area.
But he still had time to slow down and take in the phenomenon.
It was busy. It was a lot of fun. It was as far as the experience of the eclipse itself, it's pretty spectacular.
Even though the people of Eclipseville were spread out on that hot August day, the community had never been more together.
I took my staff, when it started, we closed up our business during the eclipse, and I took my staff, all of them. We went down by the lake and took some jugs of Munarita, and we watched the eclipse drinking Munaritas.
What to me was amazing, how a lot of my friends, their families all came in, and they had these, they were all in their yards.
For a few minutes when Hopkinsville stood still.
It's just a real visceral, emotional reaction to it, just a truly wonderful experience.
We, on the responder side, we're so worried about what could go wrong, did I address everything? You don't really get to enjoy the experience of it, but we did for a few minutes.
The 2024 eclipse will not go over Eclipseville, but the impact the event had on the town is long-lasting. For Indiana News Desk, I'm Callie Lichter.
Bloomington and other communities in the path of totality can learn a lot from Hopkinsville's experience. Local officials expect more than 300,000 people to visit Bloomington for the eclipse on April 8th. Aubrey Wright explains how city and Indiana University leaders plan to keep people safe.
Mayor Carrie Thompson says safety precautions will begin the weekend before the eclipse, when visitors are expected to arrive for the once-in-a-lifetime event.
There's no better place to witness the eclipse than right here in Bloomington.
She says Bloomington police are all hands on deck, with more than 50 officers working throughout the weekend. Extra firemen, traffic controllers, and sanitation teams will also be working. Schools and IU canceled classes, and city buildings will be closed.
We encourage all residents to plan ahead and go to one of the designated viewing sites throughout the community.
Indiana's roads will be packed before and after the eclipse. Sergeant Kevin Getz says Bloomington is no exception.
We're going to have a large influx of people in this community. Be patient.
He says pulling over to the sides of roads to watch the eclipse could block emergency vehicles. Officers will still have to respond to crime and emergency calls, and they need to get through heavy traffic.
Those calls are not going to stop just because of the total solar eclipse.
Ben Hunter says people should prepare for weak cell and internet service. For parents and pet owners, that might mean sorting out plans with caregivers ahead of time because calls and texts might not go through. Travelers should fill up on gas and bring food, water, and prescriptions with them.
If you travel to any eclipse event throughout central Indiana and southern Indiana, plan to arrive early, stay where you are, and get home late.
At IU, Hunter says every division is working together. The university is hosting the Hoosier Cosmic Celebration at Memorial Stadium. On campus, the IU Police Department will have extra staff and 3 first aid stations. Visitors will also be able to receive emergency alerts. More plans for pedestrian walkways and emergency reunification sites will soon be announced.
With the public's help, our extensive preparation, and so many local and state officials coming together, Indiana University is ready for an incredible eclipse weekend.
For Indiana News Desk, I'm Aubrey Wright.
Now, if you're looking to use public transportation on the big day, your options, with Bloomington Transit will be limited. BT says it will suspend operations on April 8th between 1:10 p.m. and 5:10 p.m.
We're anticipating traffic's going to be, basically a nightmare beginning around noon. We feel the suspension of service will allow us to bring everything back on track.
Now, at one point, BT considered suspending service all day, but didn't do so because many people rely on buses to get to work. The suspension will not affect BT Access, a door-to-door service for persons with a disability. We're joined now by Lucas Gonzalez for more headlines from around the state. Hi, Lucas.
Hi, Joe. Bloomington police officers could start carrying tasers as soon as next month. BPD began receiving the devices last month as part of a pilot program announced last year. The city's 85 sworn officers can begin carrying tasers after completing an 8-hour training course.
That is why we would get a tool like this, is to ensure that we can keep our officers and the public safe with the least amount of force possible. And that's always how we are approaching policing.
Bloomington police officers also use pepper spray, batons, sponge launchers, and pepper ball launchers, all of which are considered less lethal than a gun. The Bloomington Police Department is currently the only law enforcement agency in Monroe County that doesn't have its officers carry tasers. Ellettsville says it will help fund rural transit past the end of this month. The town allocated $33,000 last year to fund the service through March, but it's extending that deadline until those funds actually run out. The Ellettsville Town Council says it's working on a long-term solution.
The issue that we're running into with the town of Ellettsville is where is it on the hierarchy of priorities for them, and I understand that since they've never had to contribute to it before.
Meyer says $43,000 are still needed to fund rural transit for the rest of 2024, based on the latest ridership data. Rural transit provides door-to-door transportation on demand and in non-urban parts of Monroe and 3 other counties. The Monroe County Community School Board meeting to vote out a buyout for Superintendent Jeff Oswald took less than 3 minutes. The board met privately for less than an hour to settle on the conditions of the buyout before the short public meeting, where no public comment was heard. The final 2 years of Oswald's contract were voided in the buyout, but Oswald will be paid his contracted salary of $229,000. And Indiana's population growth is almost back in line with annual increases before the pandemic, according to a new analysis from IU's Kelley School of Business. The school's Indiana Business Research Center reports that Indiana added nearly 30,000 residents last year. Nearly 6.9 million people now live in Indiana. Indiana's latest growth is a result of exceptionally high net in-migration. More than 20,000 people moved to Indiana in 2023. Indiana's 6 fastest growing counties are all in the Indianapolis metro area. The Bloomington metro area is among 3 that lost population last year. Indiana U.S. Representative Aaron Houchin has introduced the Student Bill of Rights Act of 2024, which aims to affirm and protect the First Amendment rights of students and student organizations at public colleges and universities. Key provisions of the bill focus on flexibility of faculty sponsor requirements for student groups, making students and security fees publicly available, and protecting campus speakers. She says the bill addresses the erosion of First Amendment rights faced by students and seeks to ensure that all voices are represented in the academic community. And the largest smallmouth bass ever caught in the state was plucked out of Lake Monroe earlier this month. Rex Remington, a Jackson County resident who regularly fishes at the lake, reeled in an 8-pound, 4-ounce smallmouth bass. That's a full pound over the previous record, which was caught in LaGrange County in 1992. And Joe, after DNR weighed the fish, they say that he released it back into the lake.
Yeah, do you fish?
I don't know, not personally.
Well, if you did, you could go back this summer, catch it again, and break another record. Thanks, Lucas.
Thanks.
Coming up next on Indiana News Desk. Developers in Monroe County can start building on properties with slopes up to 25%, thanks to a new law being enacted this year. And new legislation taking effect July 1st will provide more funding to schools to support robotics competitions. These stories and more right here on Indiana News Desk.
Ready? I am, but I'm not sure you are.
Things are starting to look up.
This could be huge. I'm trying to seek redemption.
Let's do it with our heads held high.
What was that?
Could be nothing, could be everything.
Things are definitely starting to look up.
The way humans make sense of the world is through stories.
We've got to go ahead and start training to go to Mars.
And liftoff.
We pay tribute to all who serve and who have served.
Civilization is precious. Life is precious.
Artists here are making a difference. I'm trying to seek redemption.
Welcome back to Indiana News Desk. With no budget to be hammered out in the 2024 Indiana General Assembly, lawmakers expected this year's session to focus on small tweaks to existing policies, but they ended up with bills with a little bit more substance than many had imagined. Republicans touted measures to expand state education programs, ban anti-Semitism in higher education, and provide benefit enhancements for public pension recipients, all while starting the session later than usual and ending it nearly a week early.
Got a lot of things done, save the Hoosier taxpayers a little money by not having to pay us to be around.
House Minority Leader Phil Giaquinta says Republicans dropped the ball by continuing attacks on local government and not stopping Medicaid cuts to families with medically complex children. Still, he said his caucus helped stop some bad bills, including education provisions he deemed anti-labor.
If we can solve problems and recognize that we do have things to work on and stop what we feel are bad bills, we feel like it's a pretty good session for us.
Both leaders acknowledged that lawmakers this session set themselves up for major work in 2025. While Governor Eric Holcomb has signed a slew of bills into law, he is still weighing whether to sign others or not. One is a controversial bill to define and ban anti-Semitism in public education institutions. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Brandon Smith reports on a late compromise that got the bill to the governor's desk.
The crux of the controversy was the bill's use of a definition of anti-Semitism from the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance and its accompanying examples, which were originally included in the bill. Concerns were that the examples conflate criticism of the State of Israel with anti-Semitism. The compromise lawmakers passed almost unanimously on the final day of the session used the IHRA definition, but not its examples. Governor Holcomb says he's hearing concerns about excluding the examples, which he says could make the bill counterproductive. The deadline for the governor to make a decision is March 19th. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Brandon Smith at the State House.
Another bill hanging in the balance would end the city of Gary's 25-year-old lawsuit against gun makers and sellers. The bill would only allow the Attorney General's office and no other government entity in the state to sue the gun industry, even if they do something illegal. Holcomb says he's reviewing arguments from both sides. Another bill signed into law this week that will allow more students to participate in robotics competitions. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Kirsten Adair reports the new law will increase the number of schools that can receive robotics grants and allow them to spend that money to purchase robot building materials.
The law allows schools to use K-12 robotics competition grant funding for expenses related to robotics competitions, like supplies to build robots. Currently, those funds can only be used to pay for attendance costs. The new law also expands robotics funding to accredited non-public schools and amends the definition of eligible team to include competitive community-based robotics programs. The law's author, Representative Chuck Goodrich, says the funding expansion to non-public schools will allow about 75 more robotics teams to compete. Democratic lawmakers expressed concern about a provision in the law that bars robotics coaches from collective bargaining. However, the bill was still widely supported by the General Assembly. The law takes effect July 1st, 2024. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Kirsten Adair.
Now, a bill Holcomb did sign brings happy hour back to the state for the first time in decades starting July 1st. The state had banned happy hour in 1985 in a bid to help reduce drunk driving. As he signed the bill lifting that ban into law at a local Indianapolis bar, Holcomb says the measure empowers businesses to serve responsibly.
And that's what they do here at the Whistle Stop Inn and all over the state of Indiana. And so this is in response to not only their concerns and advocacy, but also to the consumer.
The bill does maintain some restrictions. Bars and restaurants can offer reduced prices for drinks for no more than 4 hours a day and 15 hours in a week, and those happy hours can't be between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m. And Monroe County developers no longer need approval to build homes on steeper grade slopes, thanks to a bill that has now been signed into law. It opens more land for development, which local authorities worry could increase erosion. Ethan Sandwise has more.
Secluded and nestled in forested slopes, the shore of Lake Lemon is an attractive destination for home buyers. But those steep hills can create expenses during construction and problems with erosion.
We work with the Lake Lemon Conservancy District, and one of their most expensive costs is that they have to constantly dredge the lake from all of the siltation that is coming into the water body from development.
Until this month, Monroe County had an ordinance that limited development on slopes steeper than 15%. House Enrolled Act 1108 prevents local governments from prohibiting development on slopes less than 25%. The Bloomington Economic Development Corporation and Chamber of Commerce supported the bill.
What we were really looking for is just another mechanism to make it easier to construct the much-needed housing that we need here in Monroe County.
State Rep Dave Hall says his law will address Monroe County's available housing shortage. His district includes parts of the county, including areas around Lake Lemon.
We aim to free up more land for development, which will increase the supply of housing, to lower housing costs, and bring the dream of home ownership within reach of a greater number of Hoosiers.
Hall says voters brought up the slope issue when he went door to door in Monroe County before the 2022 election. His opponent, Democrat Penny Githens, lost the district by just 40 votes. She says that House Bill 1108 was the first she had ever heard of the problem.
I had people talking to me about the convention center. I had people talking to me about guns. I had people talking to me about reproductive rights. I never heard a single person say anything like that.
Githens and other commissioners passed the ordinance edition in 2015, following guidance from the Indiana Department of Environmental Management against erosion, excessive stormwater runoff, and degradation of surface water. Monroe is the only county in Indiana with such an ordinance, partially due to its hills and diverse soil. Jelen says it saved property owners the cost of a soil analysis.
We have a blanket 15% restriction on steep slope buildings so that they can hopefully build on any soil type, but within a certain percent to reduce the risk of soil erosion.
Builders who wanted to construct on slopes could apply for a variance or waiver. Since the ordinance was passed, 57 variance requests went before the Board of Zoning Appeals. Only 6 were denied. The new law doesn't override other prohibitions, such as building around a drinking water source or nature preserve. That means Lake Monroe and Lake Griffey are protected, but Lake Lemon isn't. The bill passed with bipartisan support, but lawmakers on both sides questioned its actual effects on housing prices.
My words might be harsh, but it seems this is a wealthy people's bill, because if you're going to have 25 to 30 or 40% slope, who can afford to build that unless you really have the financial resources?
I would prefer to see the people with boots on the ground in the areas that deal with these kind of problems deal with these kind of problems.
Spoonmore hopes the new law will make Monroe County an attractive place for workers to start a family, but he admits building in steep areas comes with steep costs.
Anytime you have additional costs that need to mitigate, certain slopes or whatever it may be, then yeah, it's going to, increase the overall cost of the project.
This is one of several laws passed in 2024 empowering development on land previously prohibited by environmental regulations. For Indiana News Desk, I'm Ethan Sandwise.
The Department of Environmental Management recommends building on slopes greater than 15% should be avoided whenever feasible, and building on slopes greater than 25% should be avoided altogether. Well, pairings for the NCAA women's basketball tournament are announced Sunday night, and Indiana is hoping to host first-round games again this year. The Hoosiers finished the regular season with a 24-5 record and ranked number 15 in the nation, but late season injuries, particularly to star center Mackenzie Holmes, caught up to IU in the Big Ten tournament, where the Hoosiers lost their opener.
This is not Indiana at full health right now, and it's not a healthy squad. But I do believe this, that come tournament time in 2 weeks, we will have a much different looking, healthier basketball team.
Indiana earned a #1 seed last year, but lost in the second round at home to Miami. The Indiana men are not expected to make the NCAA tournament this year. The Hoosiers did make the tournament in head coach Mike Woodson's first 2 seasons as head coach. Well, that is the end of this program, but our work continues online as we cover the news throughout the week at WTIUnews.org. Have a great weekend.
Indiana News Desk is made possible in part by Maller-Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. LawMG.com. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnerships with communities and organizations. Rural.indiana.edu. Smithville Fiber Internet Security Solutions and Voice in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Bunger & Robertson Attorneys at Law, utilizing 75 years of experience, knowledge, and resources to help individuals and families recover in personal injury matters. Information at lawbr.com. And by WTIU members. Thank you.